Hello everyone and welcome to TalentSprint. In this video, we will learn about the approach towards solving puzzles from the reasoning section of various competitive exams, especially in the bank exams, right? We all know that puzzles carry a high weightage in different bank exams, POs as well as the clerical exams. So how do we answer questions based on puzzles? Well, I think the golden rule that you all must remember is that there is no shortcut to arrive at the solution. There is no technique or there is no formula that can directly give you the answer, right? It all depends. It all depends on how complex the puzzle is and how many attributes have to be fixed for getting the complete solution. And what is even more challenging is just by looking at the puzzle or the data given there, we may not be able to decide how much of time it is going to take. These are definitely very interesting questions, right? We feel like, taking it up as a challenge and solving it. But then remember that you are solving this in a time-bound exam. And time is really very, very precious. Time management is the key to success in these competitive exams. So trying to attempt a puzzle in a competitive exam is a big risk. And that is the reason the approach that I would suggest all of you to follow is to simply skip these questions. Now, I know this sounds really surprising, right? How do we skip questions which have got a huge weight in the exam? But then understand, guys, that in a 20-minute slot, which we usually have, we have to attempt 35 questions from the reasoning section. Out of these 35 questions, around 15 to 20 at best may be from puzzles. But then there are other 15 to 20 questions which are from topics where we have a proper method to solve the question. Like for example, questions on coded inequalities, questions on syllogisms, right? Or for that matter, machine input output, right? Or we can get questions on blood relations, directions, alphabet, logical series, right? Data sufficiency, and many other such topics. So the point that I'm trying to make is when you solve questions from the reasoning section, first try to crack or try to attempt the questions which are not puzzles, right? And only after you're done with all these questions, you should come back to this topic of puzzles where you have 3 or 4 questions and choose the one that you think can be solved and then just go for it. I would still say you may not be able to solve it in the exam, right? Remember, if the same question has to be answered without a time constraint, all of us will try it out. And I'm sure whether we take 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 1 hour, we will crack it and we'll get the answer, however complex the puzzle is. But do we have this much of time in the exam? Absolutely not. So keeping the time constraint in mind, the best approach for solving puzzles would be to actually skip it for the moment, solve the remaining questions first, and then come back to such questions. Right? So I think just keep that in mind, that the best way to solve puzzles, whether it's a floor-based puzzle or a distribution-based puzzle or an assignment-based problem, or even in case of circular arrangements and linear arrangements, which we have already discussed, we have learned that it is ideal to actually skip these questions, right? Especially when these are like really complex. These appear to be really complex. Okay, so keep in mind that the best approach is to just skip and move on, solve the remaining questions first. Now, the question next that pops up in your mind is, all right, we will skip it. But what if we only have to deal with puzzles? Or what do we do in the second round of exams, the main examination, where we have more weightage to puzzles and we have enough time to solve? In that case, what do we do? Well, in such cases, you should give it a try. Even there, first solve the non-puzzle based questions and then try the puzzles given there. Now, if you try solving a puzzle, what should be the approach? Let's now look at what do you do if you actually have to try it and there is no other way out. So what should be the approach for solving a puzzle, for cracking a puzzle? Well, remember, every question is different. This is not like questions in quantitative aptitude or questions in coded inequalities where there are only 3 or 4 rules that you can follow and get the answer. Right? We have seen coded inequalities. There are 3 rules that you can apply, whatever be the question type, to arrive at the answer. But it's not the same with puzzles. Every single question is different, right? It can have 2 attributes, it can have 3 attributes, it can have 5 attributes. More the number of attributes, more complexity is what it reflects, right? So there is no standard formula or method that can be applied. However, there is an approach that you can have, right? Now, what is the approach? I would say in a high level, you have 4 things or 4 steps to be followed. Step number 1. Step number 1 is to get the gist of the puzzle. Now, by this I mean read the first paragraph of the puzzle where the nuances, the more important points related to puzzles are given, like the number of people to be arranged, right? Is it a floor-based puzzle or a circular puzzle, right? Or a circular table arrangement, or a puzzle where you have to arrange people in a straight line, right? How many people are there, right? And then what are the number of attributes, right? You must have seen, right? There are 8 different persons. Each one has a favorite color. Each one has a favorite sport. Each one lives on a different floor, right? Either they're facing inwards or outwards in case of a circular arrangement, or they're facing north or south in case of a linear arrangement, right? Or some of them are males and some are females, right? Or there can be blood relation involved inside the puzzle, where you have to not only just do the arrangement but also find out who is related to whom in what way. You're getting it? So I think the first step where I say get the gist of the puzzle is to understand what needs to be done. Now, how complex it is and how much time it would take is all secondary, but get the idea, and this will actually give you an idea about the complexity level, right? The difficulty level. Just by reading the first paragraph, sometimes you can make up your mind that, boss, this is really complex, I better skip it forever. Or sometimes you feel like, okay, this looks really easy, I can try it out because I've solved many such questions, so maybe I'll be able to crack it. So the first step, guys, is to get the gist of the puzzle, where you find out the important attributes. I mean, all the important data, basically, right? Be it number of attributes, number of people to be arranged, right? The direction that they're facing, or the number of floors that there are available, and things like that. Right? That's step number 1. What is step number 2? Now, step number 2 is to get the starter. Remember, the most important piece in solving a puzzle is to get the right starter. If you start with the right clue, then it becomes really easy to crack and it becomes less time consuming, right? There are n different ways of solving a puzzle. Now, the one that has picked up the right starting point gives you the answer fastest. So getting the right starter is very, very easy, right? Your starting point is very, very easy. And it is not necessary that the first clue always is the best clue. No. So what you actually do in step number 2 is identify the best clue. Identify the clue that can connect to a lot of other points in the puzzle there. Sometimes a very simple and direct clue is given in the first step, but that clue is not related to anything else in the puzzle. Makes no sense to start with that, because how would you connect it? Puzzle is about connecting one piece with the other, right? So for you to be able to do that, you should find something which you can connect with a lot of other things. So getting the right starting point is very, very important, and that's step number 2. Now, what is step number 3? Step number 3 is to get the framework. Now, this again is also very important step, right? What I suggest to do here is to make pictures of the given data. See, why does a puzzle become time consuming? Because there's a lot of data to be read, right? A lot of sentences or a lot of statements given there, which acts as clues. Now, reading this data, again and again would make it time consuming. So what a smart student does is he reads the statement and tries to make a picture out of it, so that it becomes easy to analyze all the clues, right? Like instead of saying, for example, there are 3 people between the person who likes green color and the person who likes football, right? 3 people live between the person who likes green color and the person who likes football. Now, okay, you have read it, you have understood this, but can you apply it immediately? No, you may not be able to apply that statement immediately. You may need it at some point in future, right? After a couple of minutes. Now, after a couple of minutes, going back to that point and reading it again is a time consuming process. If you can remember it by heart, well and good, you will be able to fix it. But that's not usually the case. So going back and reading that again would make it really very, very complex and time consuming, more importantly. So what I suggest is, in this step 3 where I say you have to get the framework, you make pictures of all these points. So try to represent it pictorially, right? There is a person who likes green color. There's a person who likes football. In between them, there have to be 3 people who live. So green color, dash, 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 and football. Now there is a question. How do we know that the green color person stays on top of the person who likes football? I mean, not the green color person, the person who likes green color. So how do we make sure that, how do we know that the person who likes green color is above the person who likes football? Well, we don't know. From the given statement, we don't know. So what do? Make a double-headed arrow, indicating that, okay, these positions can be swapped. No data was given, I can swap these positions. It is for your understanding. Now there is no standard notation that you have to use a double-headed arrow. You can do anything. Or there is no rule that you have to put 3 dashes, right? Sometimes we prefer putting 3 dashes. Sometimes you can just write the number 3. Another way of doing it is green, put a number 3 and then put football. So that small picture means there are 3 people between green and football. The attribute green and the attribute football have got 3 people in between them. And again put a double-headed arrow. So this step 3 is going to play a very, very crucial role in saving your time. All right. After getting all such pictures, so if there are 10 statements given or 10 clues given, you get 10 pictures. Try to get those pictures. After getting all those pictures, you just fit it in the puzzle that you're trying to do. Right. See, more importantly, in step number 2, when you have got your starter, you have already fixed a few things. So when you get the starter, when you've read the puzzle for the first time, there are certain pieces of information or certain points which can directly be filled in the puzzle there. So fill those. And then whatever pictures you have got, try to fit those pictures in the gaps there. And that is what is called step number 4, where we fill the gaps. So what do? In step 4, you've got all these pictures, try to fill it in the arrangement that you've got there, in the puzzle that you're trying to crack there, right? So I think in a simple approach to solving puzzles would be, as we have already discussed, right? 4 steps, I would say. Again, this is not a standard procedure, but usually you should have this framework in mind when you're trying to solve a puzzle. Step number 1 is get the gist of the puzzle, which is available in the first paragraph itself, right? Try to identify the number of people to be arranged, try to identify the number of attributes, what types of attributes, right? And how complex it is. Like, for example, 8 persons have to be arranged. Now saying 8 persons have to be arranged is one thing, and saying that 8 persons are to be arranged around a circular table with all of them facing center is another thing. You understand? Or to give you another example, let's say, out of these 8 people, some are males and some are females, is one case. In another puzzle, you find out of 8 people, 5 are males and 3 are females. Now, which one is an easy one to try? I mean, just based on this 2 points, if you have to pick one, you should pick the latter one, because it tells you that 5 are males and 3 are females. The previous one just tells some are males and some are females. Now, who are male and who's female is not known to us. Maybe the number of clues will help us identify that easily, but then, you get this critical information in the first step when you're trying to get the gist of the puzzle. Step number 2. What is step number 2? Step number 2 is to get the starter. So when you start reading the clues, right, there'll be a lot of information which can be directly filled. Fill those informations in the framework there and get your starting point. Okay, I would like to start with this because this seems to be repeating more often in the data there. Like sometimes you find that the puzzle is talking about the person E. Out of 8 persons, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, E is used 4 or 5 times in the clues. So maybe starting with E would help you because he's connected to a lot of other clues. So I can fill the gaps easily, right? Sometimes you may not find that, right? So in that case, you have to just pick up one which you think can help you and just proceed, right? So step number 2 is to get the starter, get the right starter, where you fill the data which is directly available. Like sometimes he says, C stays on 4th floor. Now that's directly available. Fill that, no brainer. But that's not your starter, right? I mean, that's not your starting point because that is anyway given. Starting point is something which can help you connect with the unknown points there in the puzzle there, right? Which can help you fill the gaps easily. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is to make those pictures, like I said, get those, the framework is available, but get those small pictures, read the statements, convert that to pictures, and then use these pictures in filling the gaps, right? And step number 4 is to fill the gaps there. So I think, guys, if you have this approach in solving any puzzle, it would probably help you arrive at the answer faster. But still, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to crack it in that limited time. Do we have unlimited time? No. So the moral of the story remains the same, that the best way to solve puzzles would be to skip this in the exam. Now, not skip for good, solve the other questions first and then come back. Okay. And of course, in main examination, in the, let's say, IBPS PO main exam or SBA PO main exam or IBPS or SBA clerks main exam, you will definitely have a lot of puzzles. You will also have a decent time to try. So in that case, you have to pick up the one from the 3-4 puzzles that are there. Choose the one that you think is easy to crack. Start with that and just take it forward. You may or may not be able to crack it, but then There's no other way out. There is no technique to identify how easy or complex a puzzle is just by looking at it. And of course, as you keep practicing, you will get that ability to identify the difficulty level of the puzzle. So I think, in addition to all that I've mentioned, practice is always the key, right? So keep practicing. We have a lot of puzzles that we have covered already, and we will be covering a lot of puzzles every week. We'll keep adding those new puzzles to your learning content. But I think, yeah, take up a puzzle, have this approach in mind, and see if you're able to crack it, right? During practice, you may take longer, doesn't matter. But when you keep practicing every day, you will come to a stage where you get that confidence that, okay, given the situation, if I have to solve a puzzle, I can try it, and I can try with the best possible approach, right? So 4 steps. Step number 1, get the gist. Step number 2 is to get the starter. Step number 3 is to get that framework in terms of pictures. And step number 4 is to fill the gaps. On that note, let me close this video here. We will be covering a lot of examples which will help you actually do the practice and improve your puzzle solving ability. Thank you.